In the suffocating jungle of Vietnam, a 5-man Marine recon squad was deep behind enemy lines, gathering intel on a crucial Viet Cong supply route. The mission was routine until the jungle went silent. A civilian patrol route turned deadly when a hidden enemy force sprang their ambush with surgical precision. Sergeant Jack "Hawkeye" Calloway wasn't just another Marine. For 2 tours, he had led some of the most dangerous recon missions, surviving encounters that should have killed him 10 times over. His instincts, sharpened by experience, had earned him a reputation: the man who saw death coming before it arrived. When the Viet Cong opened fire, herding his squad into a perfect kill zone, they had no idea they were walking into the trap of a man who had fought ghosts in the dark. And won. Jack didn't panic. He didn't surrender. He made the one call that would turn the hunters into the hunted. What began as an ambush became a reckoning. The jungle would never forget what happened the night Sergeant Calloway turned the enemy's own tactics against them and called in fire from the heavens. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The monsoon rains had finally let up, leaving behind a suffocating blanket of humidity that clung to Sergeant Jack "Hawkeye" Calloway's skin like a second uniform. He'd been in country long enough to know the jungle was never truly silent, but tonight something felt different. Wrong. The crickets had gone quiet 10 minutes ago, and the hair on the back of his neck wouldn't stop standing up. His 5-man Marine recon squad moved through the darkness like ghosts, their boots barely making a sound on the damp earth. They were deeper in Viet Cong territory than command had authorized, but Jack knew sometimes you had to break the rules to complete the mission. The intel about the enemy supply route was too good to pass up. "Hawkeye," Corporal Danny "Dimes" Martinez whispered from behind him, his radio equipment creating a bulky silhouette in the darkness. "We're way past our comfort zone here. Maybe we should—" Jack held up his fist, the universal signal to freeze. The squad immediately went still, melting into the shadows of the towering bamboo. Through his night vision scope, he caught movement ahead, a flash of something that didn't belong. Lance Corporal Evan "Rookie" Carter, their youngest and newest addition, was on point. The kid's hands were steady on his M14 sniper rifle, but Jack could see the tension in his shoulders. Something moved again in the darkness, and Rookie's finger tightened on the trigger. Movement, 2 o'clock. Rookie breathed into his throat. First, permission to engage? Jack studied the shape through his own scope. Something wasn't right. The movement was too obvious, too exposed. In his experience, the Viet Cong were never that careless unless— "Hold your fire," Jack ordered. But his words were drowned out by the sudden crack of automatic weapons fire. The night exploded into chaos as muzzle flashes lit up the jungle from 3 directions. They'd walked right into it. A perfect ambush. "Contact front!" Private First Class Henry "Hacksaw" O'Malley screamed, his M60 machine gun roaring to life. The big Kentucky farm boy laid down, suppressing fire, but the enemy had positioned themselves well. They were being herded. "Dimes, get on the horn," Jack shouted, dropping to one knee and returning fire at the muzzle flashes. "We need air support now." Sergeant First Class Paul "Preacher" Grayson was already moving, setting up claymore mines to cover their rear. The religious man worked with mechanical precision, his movements betraying years of experience. "The Lord guides my hands," he muttered, barely audible over the gunfire. "And today he has chosen to test us." Dimes frantically worked his radio, but all they got was static. "Channel's dead," he called out. "Someone's jamming us." A bullet cracked past Jack's head, embedding itself in the tree behind him. This wasn't random fire. These shots were placed with surgical precision. They were being funneled into a kill zone. "Fall back," Jack ordered, grabbing Rookie by his combat vest and yanking him behind cover. "Hacksaw, cover our 6. Preacher, those—" "Claymores ready?" "Ready to deliver some divine intervention," Preacher confirmed, his voice eerily calm. They retreated through the jungle, leaving behind vital gear in their haste. Jack's mind raced. This wasn't just bad intel, this was a setup. The enemy had known exactly where they'd be, had prepared this ambush with too much precision for it to be coincidence. Rookie stumbled beside him, his face pale in the darkness. "Sergeant," he gasped between breaths. "They had a clear shot at me, front position, but they didn't take it. Why wouldn't they take it?" Jack's blood ran cold. The kid was right. The Viet Cong weren't trying to kill them. Not yet. They were being pushed somewhere specific. Behind them, Preacher's claymores detonated with a thunderous roar, momentarily illuminating the jungle. In that flash of light, Jack caught glimpses of black-clad figures moving through the trees with practiced ease. His instincts screamed that this was more than a routine patrol gone wrong. "Dimes," he called out as they regrouped in a small clearing. "Try another frequency. Keep trying until something works." But Dimes just shook his head, his usual optimism replaced by grim understanding. "It's not random interference, Hawkeye. Someone's actively blocking us. We're cut off." The reality of their situation settled over the squad like a heavy shroud. They were miles beyond their assigned patrol zone. Their communications were down, and the enemy seemed to be playing with them rather than finishing them off. Preacher appeared beside them, his rifle held, close. "Every step we took was ordained," he whispered, eyes scanning the darkness. "This is Judgment Day, brothers. The only question is who's being judged." Jack checked his ammunition. 3 magazines left. Not enough if this turned into a prolonged engagement. The jungle pressed in around them, alive with hidden threats. And for the first time in his 2 tours, he felt something he hadn't experienced since his first firefight. Pure, primal fear. They weren't in control. They never had been. And somewhere out there in the darkness, someone was orchestrating their downfall with terrifying precision. "We're not done," Jack declared, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "Not by a long shot. But from here on out, trust no one outside this squad. Someone set us up, and when I find out who, there won't be enough left of them to send home in a body bag." The jungle swallowed his words, and in the distance they could hear the enemy moving, closing in. The real test was just beginning. The first shot came without warning, a high-velocity round that shattered the branch next to Jack's head. Before the echo died, a second round kicked up dirt at his feet. Not random fire. Warning shots. "Sniper!" Jack barked, diving behind a massive banyan tree. "Get to cover now." His squad scattered like leaves in the wind, each man finding what protection they could in the treacherous terrain. The sniper was good. Too good. Every shot came closer than the last, but none went for the kill. They were being herded again, pushed toward something worse. Hacksaw's M60 roared to life, the heavy machine gun sending a wall of lead into the canopy. "I got movement at 11 o'clock, he shouted over the din. Multiple tangos in the trees. Jack studied the jungle through his scope, trying to piece together the enemy's strategy. The Viet Cong were masters of asymmetrical warfare, but this was different. This felt personal. "Dimes," he called out. "Try that radio again. Someone has to be listening." His radio man worked frantically with the equipment, but the static remained unbroken. "Still being jammed," Dimes reported, frustration evident in his voice. "But here's the thing, Hawkeye, this isn't normal interference. Someone's using American equipment. These are our frequencies being blocked." The implications hit Jack like a physical blow. American equipment, American frequencies. The betrayal went deeper than he'd imagined. Rookie huddled behind a fallen log, his sniper rifle trembling in his hands. The kid's face was a mask of barely controlled panic. "They're everywhere," he whispered. "In the trees, in the shadows, we're surrounded." "Stay focused, Marine," Jack ordered, but he could see the strain taking its toll. Rookie was good, one of the best marksmen he'd ever seen, but everyone had their breaking point. Preacher moved like a ghost through the undergrowth, checking their perimeter. Suddenly, he froze, dropping to one knee. "Hold," he commanded, his voice carrying an edge of urgency. "Tripwire." Jack moved carefully to his position, and his blood ran cold. The wire was nearly invisible, stretched across their most likely escape route, if Preacher hadn't spotted it. "This isn't random," Preacher murmured, carefully disarming the trap. "These positions, these tactics, someone knows us, knows how we think, how we move." Another sniper round cracked overhead, forcing them lower. Jack's mind raced through the possibilities. The enemy was toying with them, yes, but why? What was the endgame? "Hacksaw, give me another burst, 3 o'clock, Jack ordered. As the M60 thundered, he caught movement in his peripheral vision, a flash of black uniform, too obvious to be accidental. They want us to see them, he realized aloud. They're showing us exactly where they are. Why? Dimes asked, pressed against a tree trunk. Why not just kill us? Because this isn't about killing, Jack replied grimly. This is about fear, about breaking us down piece by piece. The pressure was mounting. Jack could feel it in his chest and the way his hands wouldn't stop shaking. One wrong decision, one misstep, and his entire squad would die. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Rookie suddenly bolted, upright, firing 3 rapid shots into the canopy. There! I saw him, I swear I saw... His words cut off in a strangled gasp as a bullet grazed his helmet, sending him sprawling. Stay down! Jack grabbed the kid's vest, yanking him back to cover. Rookie's eyes were wide, unfocused. The pressure was getting to him, cracking his resolve like an egg. We need to move, Preacher announced, scanning the ridgeline ahead. Higher ground, give us a fighting chance. Jack nodded slowly. Staying here was suicide, but moving meant exposing themselves. Either way, they were dancing to someone else's tune. Listen up, he gathered his squad close. We're making a break for that ridge. Hacksaw, you're on point with the M60. Preacher, watch our 6. Dimes, stay on that radio. If you get even a whisper of a signal, I want to know. Rookie. He gripped the young Marine's shoulder. You're my eyes. I need you focused. Can you do that? Rookie swallowed hard, then nodded. His hands still shook, but his eyes had regained some of their clarity. We move in 30 seconds, Jack announced. Whatever's waiting up there. Whatever. Sick game they're playing, we face it together, clear? Clear, his squad echoed. As they prepared to move, Dimes caught Jack's arm. Someone set us up, he whispered. Someone who knows our protocols, our frequencies. When we get out of this, Jack cut him off. There won't be anywhere on Earth. They can hide. The jungle waited, alive with hidden threats. The ridge loomed ahead like a mountain of shadows. And somewhere up there, Jack knew, answers awaited. If they lived long enough to find them. The ridge had given them temporary shelter. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were exactly where the enemy wanted them. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the canopy, and in those shadows doubt began to take root. He was studying their back trail when he saw it, the detail that changed everything. Bootprints in the mud, traveling parallel to their own path, not following but leading. American boots, military issue, identical to the ones his squad wore. Dimes, he called softly, take a look at this. His radio man crouched beside him, eyes narrowing at the tracks. Those are ours, he said, then caught Jack's meaning. But they're ahead of where we were. Someone led us here, Jack finished. Someone who knew exactly where we'd be. The implications settled over them like a toxic cloud. Jack studied his squad. Men he'd fought beside, bled beside. One of them had betrayed them all. But who? Preacher sat apart from the others, cleaning his rifle with mechanical precision. The religious man had been quieter than usual, his prayers replaced by long periods of unsettling silence. I felt it, Preacher said suddenly, not looking up from his work. Before we left base, the Lord sends warnings if you know how to listen. His hands never stopped moving on the weapon. I should have spoken up sooner. Jack watched him carefully. What exactly did you feel, Preacher? Death, the man replied simply. But not from the enemy, from within. Dimes spat on the ground. That's crazy talk. None of us would... His words cut off as static burst from his radio, the first signal they'd received in hours. Through the interference, a voice spoke in coded bursts. Jack recognized the pattern. It was an American encryption algorithm, but the message itself. That's Vietnamese, Rookie whispered, his sniper training having included basic language skills. Mixed with English, they're talking about us. The transmission died as quickly as it had come, but the damage was done. Someone was feeding their position to the enemy, using American codes to do it. Jack moved away from his men, needing space to think. He'd led these Marines through hell and back, trusted them with his life countless times. Now he had to consider, each one a potential enemy. Hacksaw maintained his watch position, the M60 ready. The big Kentucky farm boy seemed solid, dependable, but hadn't he been the first to spot movement in the jungle just before the ambush? Rookie's hands hadn't stopped shaking since the firefight. Combat stress, or guilt. The enemy had let him live when they had a clear shot. Why? Dimes refused to accept the possibility of betrayal, but his loyalty could blind him to the truth. And Preacher had felt something was wrong. Convenient. "Sarge," Rookie called out, his voice barely a whisper. "Are we going to make it out of here?" "Really?" Jack wanted to offer reassurance, but the words stuck in his throat. The truth was, he didn't know anymore. Every instinct, every lesson learned in 2 tours of combat told him they were being hunted by a superior force. But now the enemy wasn't just in the jungle, it was among them. "Listen up." He gathered his squad close, watching their faces, for any sign, any tell. Night's coming, Charlie's out there waiting, and someone... He let his gaze touch each man in turn. Someone is helping them. When we find out who, there won't be a trial. There won't be questions. Are we clear? They nodded, each man eyeing the others with new suspicion. Trust, the binding force that had kept them alive through countless missions, was fracturing like ice in spring. "I don't believe it," Dimes said later as they prepared their defensive positions. "We're brothers. We've bled together. None of us could..." "Someone did," Jack cut him off. "Someone knew about this patrol. Someone made sure we walked right into that ambush. And someone is still out there feeding them our every move." As if to emphasize his point, a twig snapped in the darkness. Every weapon turned toward the sound, fingers tight on triggers. The paranoia was taking hold, turning shadows into enemies, and brothers into suspects. Preacher's voice drifted from his position, soft but clear. "Judge not, lest ye be judged, but vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." Night was falling, and with it came the certainty that their ordeal was far from over. The enemy was watching, waiting, and somewhere among them a traitor prepared for the next act in this deadly game. Jack checked his weapon one last time, his mind racing through scenarios, possibilities, suspects. He'd always told his men that in combat hesitation kills, but now trust could be just as deadly. Darkness fell like a shroud over the jungle, and with it came the whispers. At first Jack thought it was just the wind through the leaves, but wind didn't speak names. Wind didn't laugh. "Perimeter check," he ordered, his voice barely above, a whisper. Each man reported in turn, their voices tight with tension. The jungle was too quiet. Even the insects had gone silent, as if holding their breath. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision, human-shaped but wrong somehow. Jack's rifle snapped up, finger squeezing the trigger. The muzzle flash illuminated empty air, the rounds disappearing into the darkness. "Contact?" Dimes called out. But Jack couldn't answer. He'd seen something, he was sure of it, wasn't he? "They're out there," Hacksaw muttered from his position, the M60's barrel scanning the tree line. "Playing with us, like cats with mice." A scream shattered the silence. Distant, distinctly American. It could have been a trick of acoustics, an animal or something worse. Rookie's breath came in sharp gasps, his rifle trembling as he tracked shadows that weren't there. "Did you hear that?" the kid whispered. "Sounded like..." "Focus," Jack snapped. But his own heart was racing. The jungle was alive around them, every shadow concealing potential threats, every sound a possible signal. Then came the voices, drifting through the darkness in a mix of Vietnamese and English. Fragments of conversation, military codes, personal details that no enemy should know. "They know us," Preacher said softly. "They know everything about us." This is judgment. Brothers, the sins of the past come calling. A branch snapped behind them. Every weapon turned, fingers tight on triggers. In the green glow of night vision, Jack saw Hacksaw's face twist with recognition. Someone just moved. The big man growled. One of us heading east. Nobody moved, Dimes countered. We're all right here. I know what I saw. Hacksaw's voice rose dangerously. One of us snuck off, probably to report to his real friends. Stand down, Jack ordered, but the damage was done. The paranoia that had been building all day erupted into open suspicion. Movement flickered in Rookie's peripheral vision. He spun, squeezing off a round before his brain could process what he was seeing. The shot went wide, missing Preacher's head by inches. Jesus Christ! Dimes tackled the kid, wrestling his rifle away. What are you doing? I saw something. Rookie was shaking uncontrollably now. A shadow, moving like it wasn't human. The jungle plays tricks, Preacher intoned, seemingly unfazed by his near-death experience. But perhaps the Lord is showing us truth through shadows. The enemy walks among us, wearing the face of a friend. Jack fought to maintain control, but he could feel his own grip on reality slipping. The darkness pressed in, thick enough to choke on. Every rustle of leaves could be an approaching enemy, every shadow a potential traitor. A whispered voice drifted past, too close, too familiar. Jack? Why did you lead them here, Jack? He whirled, rifle raised, but there was nothing. Just darkness and the sound of his own ragged breathing. We can't stay here, he decided, his voice hoarse. They're inside our heads playing games. We have to move. Move where? Dimes demanded. We don't even know where we are anymore. Anywhere but here, Jack replied. The jungle's against us, the night's against us, and one of us. He let the thought hang unfinished. Another scream echoed through the darkness, closer this time. Rookie began praying under his breath, a stream of desperate words that blended with Preacher's own murmured verses. The day of reckoning approaches, Preacher announced, his eyes reflecting an unsettling gleam in the darkness. When all sins shall be laid bare and judgment shall fall like fire from heaven. Jack checked his compass, but the needle spun wildly, as if even magnetic north had abandoned them. The jungle seemed to breathe around them, alive with malevolent purpose. We move in 5, he ordered, trying to project confidence he no longer felt. Stay tight. Trust no one outside this circle. But even as he said it, he knew the circle was already broken. The enemy wasn't just out there in the darkness. It was among them, wearing a familiar face, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The night pressed closer, and somewhere in the shadows something laughed. The radio crackled to life with a sound that stopped them all in their tracks, a clear voice cutting through the static. After hours of silence, it was like hearing water in the desert. Sierra 3, this is Base Camp Actual. Do you copy? Over. Dimes' hands trembled as he adjusted the frequency. This is Sierra 3. We are under heavy enemy contact, requiring immediate assistance. Over. Jack knew that voice on the radio. Captain Stevens, their operations commander. The same man who had briefed them on this mission. Relief Ward, with suspicion in his gut. Copy that, Sierra 3. We have your position. Rescue operation is already inbound. Hold tight. Over. Rookie's face lit up with desperate hope. They found us. We're getting out of here. But something felt wrong. Jack had run enough operations to know the standard protocols. This wasn't following any of them. Sir, Dimes continued, be advised we have reason to believe our communications have been compromised. Request authentication code. Over. There was a pause. Too long. Authentication Sierra Delta 79. Dust off ETA 20 minutes. Over. Jack's blood ran cold. That code, it was from last week's rotation. It should have been changed. Those aren't our people, he said quietly. But it's Captain Stevens, Rookie protested. I recognized his voice. Exactly. Preacher spoke from the shadows. The enemy knows our voices, knows our codes. The serpent in the garden speaks with a familiar tongue. Hacksaw chambered around in his M60. Let them come. Got enough ammo here to greet any rescue party. The radio crackled again, but this time the voice was different, accented, mocking. We see you, Marines, all of you, running like scared, children in the dark. Dimes nearly dropped the handset. The voice continued, each word precise and cruel. Your command knows where you are. They sent you here, to us, to die. Shut it off, Jack ordered. But the damage was done. The brief flame of hope had been extinguished, leaving only darker shadows behind. How? Rookie's voice cracked. How do they know our frequencies, our codes? Because someone told them, Jack replied, watching his men's faces in the darkness. Someone high up. This goes deeper than we thought. Dimes stared at his radio as if it had betrayed him personally. All his years of service, his unwavering faith in the chain of command, crumbled in the face of this revelation. Keep moving, Jack ordered. Their position was compromised, had been from the start. Every second they stayed put was another second for the enemy to close in. Where? Hacksaw demanded. If command's compromised, who do we trust? No one, Jack replied. We trust no one but ourselves now. They moved through the jungle like ghosts, each man lost in his own thoughts. The weight of betrayal hung heavy on their shoulders. It wasn't just the enemy out there in the darkness, it was their own command, their own people, who had fed them to the wolves. Preacher's voice drifted from the rear of their formation. And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. Knock it off, Dimes snapped. But Jack understood. Death was riding with them tonight, wearing the face of false salvation. The jungle seemed to press closer, branches reaching like grasping fingers. Every shadow held potential treachery, every familiar voice a possible deception. They were alone in the truest sense, abandoned by their command, hunted by their enemy, and harboring a traitor in their midst. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter's rotors thundered, rescue or death coming on swift wings through the night. They couldn't know which, couldn't trust even the most basic signs of salvation. If they're coming for us, Hacksaw growled, they better bring plenty of body bags. Jack checked his ammunition, 3 magazines left. Not enough for a prolonged fight, but maybe enough to make their betrayers pay in blood. The helicopter. Sound grew louder, and with it came a certainty. The next few minutes would determine whether they lived or died. And in the dark heart of Vietnam's jungle, those options were starting to look frighteningly similar. The emergency flare felt heavy in Jack's hand, their last chance at salvation, or maybe their death warrant. Standard operating procedure said to wait, to verify friendly forces before signaling. But they were beyond procedure now. If I'm wrong about this, he told his squad, I'm sorry. The flare screamed into the night sky, painting the jungle in harsh red light. For a moment, everything was illuminated. The twisted branches, their haggard faces, and the enemy positions they hadn't even known were there. Multiple hostiles, 3 o'clock. Hacksaw opened up with the M60, the muzzle flash strobing in the darkness. They're moving in! The sound of rotors grew louder, but something was wrong. The pitch was off. Too high. Too fast. That's not a rescue chopper, Dimes realized aloud. That's incoming! Jack's scream was drowned out by the first mortar impact. The jungle erupted around them, trees splintering like matchsticks. Someone had redirected an artillery strike right on their position. Move! Jack grabbed Rookie by his vest, hurling him behind a massive fallen tree. The ground shook with consecutive impacts, each explosion closer than the last. They weren't trying to support the squad. They were trying to obliterate them. Preacher appeared out of the chaos, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. The Lord's judgment comes from above. Another explosion threw Jack off his feet. His ears rang, vision blurring. Through the smoke and debris, he saw one of his men, he couldn't tell who, flying backward like a broken doll. I killed us. The thought hammered in his skull. I killed my own men. The barrage seemed to last forever, but probably only went on for minutes. When it finally stopped, The jungle was transformed. Trees shattered, earth cratered, smoke hanging like a shroud. "Sound off," Jack called out, his voice hoarse. "Who's still breathing?" One by one, his squad responded. Somehow, miraculously, they'd all survived. But they weren't alone. "Movement!" Rookie's voice cracked. 10 o'clock, wounded enemy. Through the settling dust, Jack saw him, a Viet Cong soldier, trapped under a fallen branch. The man was alive, conscious, and watching them with eyes that held more knowledge than fear. Dimes reached him first, rifle trained on the wounded man's chest. "Don't move," he growled in broken Vietnamese. The soldier coughed, blood staining his lips, but he smiled, actually smiled. "You speak English," Jack said. It wasn't a question. "Better than you think," the man replied, his accent slight. "They told us you would come, told us exactly where to wait." Dimes pressed his rifle harder against the man's chest. "Who told you? Who's feeding you our intel?" Telling and preparing. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The soldier's smile widened. "You still don't understand. This was never about killing you, this was about making you see." "See what?" Jack demanded. "The truth. About your command. About who really controls this war." The man's breathing was getting shallow, but his eyes remained focused. "You think you're fighting for the right side?" Rookie had moved closer, his young face a mask of horror. "The airstrike. They tried to kill us. Our own people tried to kill us." "Not your people," the soldier whispered. "His people." "Whose?" Jack grabbed the man's shirt. "Who gave the order?" The soldier's eyes were starting to glaze over, but his voice remained clear. "Trin knows. Trin knows everything." His head lolled back, last breath escaping in a soft sigh. "Trin?" Dimes looked at Jack. "Who the hell is Trin?" But Jack's blood had run cold. He knew that name. Every American commander in the region knew that name. Captain Bao Trin, the Shadow, the Ghost, the Viet Cong commander, who seemed to always be one step ahead. "He's real," Jack whispered. "All this time I thought he was just a story they told to scare us, but he's real. And he knows us," Preacher added softly. "Knows our movements, our protocols. The question is, how?" The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about a single betrayal, a single leaked operation. This was systematic. Someone high up in American command was working with Trin, feeding him intelligence, coordinates, everything he needed to orchestrate their destruction. The jungle had gone quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. The kind that comes when you realize the enemy isn't just out there in the darkness. They're in your own house, wearing your own uniform, giving your own orders. "We need to move," Jack finally said. "They'll be coming to check for survivors." "Where?" Rookie asked, his voice small. "Where do we go when we can't trust our own rescue?" Jack checked his compass, but the answer had nothing to do with direction. "We find Trin," he said. "We find him, and we make him tell us who's really running this war." The smoke continued to rise around them, a testament to how close they'd come to death. But as they gathered their gear and prepared to move out, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the real fire, the one that would either forge them or destroy them, was still to come. The dying Viet Cong soldier didn't have long, minutes, maybe less. The mortar strike had done its work well, too well for proper interrogation. But they had to try. "Talk to me about Trin," Dimes demanded, kneeling beside the wounded man. Gone was the easygoing Bronx kid. In his place was something harder, darker. "How does he know our movements?" The soldier coughed, blood bubbling at his lips, but his eyes remained sharp, alert, almost amused. "Trin, he sees everything, like your God." His gaze flickered to Preacher. "But he is not so forgiving." Jack's mind raced, piecing together fragments of intelligence he'd gathered over 2 tours. Captain Bao Trin, a shadow figure, a boogeyman, commanders whispered about. Some said he was former ARVN, trained by Americans before turning. Others claimed he was Chinese intelligence, or even Russian. But all the stories agreed on one thing. He was always one step ahead. The airstrike, Jack said. Trin knew it was coming. How? The soldier's smile widened, revealing blood-stained teeth. Ask your commanders. Ask why they send brave Marines to die in jungle. His English was perfect, too perfect. Ask why they give Trin all he needs to hunt you. You're lying, Dimes growled, but doubt had crept into his voice. Am I? The soldier's eyes locked onto Jack's. Think, Sergeant. Who knew your patrol route? Who called in artillery on their own men? Why? The shot came without warning, a single crack that echoed through the ruined jungle. The soldier's head snapped back, a neat hole appearing between his eyes. His last secret died with him. Sniper, Jack bellowed, but Preacher was already shaking his head. Not one of ours, he said quietly. That was a Russian round. SVD Dragunov. Rookie stared at the dead man, at the way his blood mixed with the mud. His first time seeing an execution up close. They killed him. Their own man. Because he was talking, Jack realized. Someone didn't want him finishing that sentence. Dimes slammed his fist into a tree trunk. We were so close. He was about to tell us. He told us enough. Jack cut him off. Trin has someone inside. Our command structure. Someone high up enough to redirect artillery strikes to know our patrol routes to... He stopped, a horrible thought taking root. What if it wasn't just one person? What if the corruption went deeper? A branch snapped in the darkness. Then another. The enemy was moving in. We need to go, Hacksaw urged, M60 sweeping the tree line. They'll be all over us soon. Jack took one last look at the dead soldier. Even in death, that knowing smile remained. He'd died with secrets intact, but he'd given them enough to start piecing together the truth. They moved deeper into the jungle, away from the mortar craters and the cooling corpse. But the soldiers' words followed them, echoing in their minds. Ask your commanders. Ask why they send brave Marines to die. What if he was right? Dimes finally voiced what they were all thinking. What if command really is compromised? Then we trust no one, Jack replied. Not until we find Trin and get answers. Rookie, bringing up the rear, kept looking back at where they'd left the body. Something had changed in the kid's eyes, the last traces of innocence burning away like morning fog. Contact front. Hacksaw's whisper carried urgency, more movement in the jungle ahead. They were being herded again, pushed toward something. But what? Dawn's coming soon, Preacher observed quietly. We need shelter, somewhere defensible. Jack nodded. They couldn't keep running forever. Sooner or later, they'd have to make a stand. But first, they needed answers. Real answers, not the cryptic warnings of a dying man. The jungle pressed in around them, alive with hidden threats. Somewhere out there, Trin was watching, orchestrating their every move like pieces on a chessboard. And somewhere, maybe closer than they thought, a traitor was feeding him the intelligence he needed to do it. Dawn was coming, but Jack had a feeling the real darkness was just beginning. They found the cave just as the first gray light of dawn began seeping through the canopy. It was well hidden. They would have missed it entirely if Preacher hadn't spotted the subtle signs of foot traffic leading to its mouth. Careful, Jack warned as they approached. Charlie loves to booby-trap these holes. Hacksaw swept the entrance with his flashlight. Clear of trip lines, but he trailed off, the beam catching something that made them all freeze. Bones. American bones, judging by the tatters of uniforms still clinging to them. 3 skeletons, positioned as if they'd died sitting up against the cave wall. Jesus Christ, Dimes whispered. They entered cautiously, each man fighting the instinct to run. The cave wasn't deep, maybe 30 feet, but it felt like descending into a tomb. Their flashlight beams revealed more signs of its previous occupants. Rusty weapons, rotted equipment, and in the corner, an old field radio. Dimes made straight for it, hands trembling with barely contained excitement. "It's an old PRC-25. These things were built to last. If I can just—" "Set up a perimeter first," Jack ordered. "Hacksaw, rig some early warning. Rookie, you're on watch. Preacher." He paused, noticing the older man studying the skeletal remains with unsettling intensity. "They died waiting," Preacher said softly. "Waiting for rescue that never came. Just like we will." "That's not helping," Jack snapped, but he couldn't shake the symmetry. How many other units had ended up like this, trapped behind enemy lines, betrayed by their own command? A stack of moldering papers caught his eye. He picked them up carefully. They were mostly disintegrated, but some text was still legible. His blood ran cold as he read. "These are operation orders," he said, "American operations from 2 years ago." He held up one fragile sheet. "Look at the margin notes, Vietnamese writing, analyzing our tactics, our protocols. They've been studying us," Dimes said without looking up from the radio. "Learning how we think, how we move." "No," Jack corrected grimly. "Someone's been teaching them." Rookie's voice drifted from the cave mouth, tight with tension. Did anyone else hear that?" "Hear what?" Hacksaw asked, still setting up tripwires. "Voices. In the dark. They're saying—" The kid swallowed hard. "They're saying my name." Jack started to respond, but a sound from deeper in the cave made them all freeze. Something had moved in the shadows beyond their flashlight beams. "Nothing's back there," Hacksaw said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I checked. It's a dead end." Dimes worked frantically at the radio, stripping wires with shaking hands. "If I can just get power to the receiver, maybe boost the signal with parts from our dead radio." "You're wasting your time," Preacher said. "The only messages we'll receive here are from the dead." As if to mock them, a pebble clattered from the darkness. Then another. Something was moving in the cave with them. "Hacksaw," Jack called. "Out, get a light on." "Got it!" Dimes exclaimed as the radio crackled to life. Static filled the cave, then, "Welcome home, Marines." The voice was crisp, clear, and speaking perfect English. Every man in the cave felt their skin crawl. "Did you think you were the first to seek shelter here? To hope for rescue?" The voice continued, almost gentle. "Ask your brothers on the wall how that worked out for them." "Who is this?" Jack demanded, but he already knew. "Captain Trin sends his regards. He so looks forward to adding your bones to his collection." Rookie's rifle clattered to the ground. The kid was shaking, uncontrollably now, eyes wide with terror. The voices, they're real, they're all real. Another sound from the dark depths of the cave, closer this time. Like footsteps, but wrong somehow. As if whatever was making them wasn't quite human. "You are not alone," the voice on the radio said, and now they could hear it echoing from the darkness too. "You were never alone." The cave suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. The skeletons seemed to watch them with empty sockets, their fate a preview of what awaited. "We need to move," Jack ordered, but even as he said it, he knew. They were exactly where Trin wanted them. This wasn't just a cave, it was a trap, and they had walked right into it. The radio crackled one final time. "Welcome to your tomb, Marines." Then the shooting started. They fought their way out of the cave in a blur of muzzle flashes and grenades, leaving behind 3 fresh corpses to keep the skeletons company. But they had taken something with them. Dimes had grabbed the old radio, refusing to leave it behind. "It's our only link to command," he'd insisted. "Our only chance to understand what's really happening." Now, huddled in a dense thicket a mile from the cave, that radio crackled with intermittent bursts of static. Dimes worked the dial with fevered intensity, like a man trying to decode messages from God. "Easy, brother," Jack said softly. "You're going to—" The static suddenly cleared, replaced by voices speaking in rapid Vietnamese. Then, unmistakably, English. "Confirmed location of Calloway's unit. No extraction authorized. Keep them contained until—" Dimes' hands froze on the dial. They were hearing a conversation they were never meant to hear. American voices coordinating with the enemy. Son of a bitch, Hacksaw breathed. The transmission continued, fragments cutting through the static. Priority target Jack Calloway. No survivors necessary. Trin wants proof of elimination. Jack felt the words like physical blows. He'd known, somewhere deep, down, that they'd been betrayed. But hearing it so cold, so clinical. They tried to kill us in that cave, used the whole thing as a trap. Rookie's voice cracked. Are they listening to us die? Another voice cut through, this one speaking perfect English with just a hint of an accent. Sergeant Calloway, I know you are listening. A pause. You were not meant to survive this long. Most impressive. Dimes's hands tightened on the radio. His face, usually so quick to smile, had turned to stone. Your command has abandoned you, Sergeant. They chose you for this mission specifically. You and your men, you know too much, have seen too much. You are what they call loose ends. Shut it off, Hacksaw growled, but Dimes didn't move. No extraction is coming, no rescue, no heroic last stand. You will die in this jungle, forgotten like so many others before you. Unless what? Jack found himself asking the static. Unless you prove more useful alive than dead. Think about it, Sergeant. Why you? Why this mission? What did you discover that made them want to silence you? The transmission dissolved into static, then cleared for one final message, a coded sequence that made Jack's blood run cold. He recognized it. Target elimination confirmed. Mission complete. They were already being reported as dead. Dimes finally snapped. With a roar of rage, he hurled the radio against a tree trunk, shattering it into pieces. They're killing us. Our own command is fucking killing us. Dimes, Jack started, but his radio man was beyond reason. All this time, all this loyalty, for what? To die in this goddamn jungle because we saw something we weren't supposed to see? But what did we see? Rookie asked, his voice small. What could be worth all this? Jack's mind raced back through the past 24 hours. The ambush, the documents in the cave, the precise coordination between American and Vietnamese forces. This wasn't just about one mission gone wrong. We stumbled onto something bigger, he said slowly. Something they've been hiding for years. The real war. There is no rescue coming, Preacher intoned. We are truly alone. No. Jack's voice hardened. We're not alone. We've got each other. And we've got something else now. We've got nothing left to lose. His squad looked at him, waiting. In their eyes, he saw the same rage, the same burning need for answers that he felt in his gut. They want us dead? Fine. But we're not dying quiet. We're taking this fight straight to Trin. He wants to hunt us? Let's show him what happens when the prey decides to hunt back. How? Dimes asked, his anger focusing into something sharper, more dangerous. We've got their radio codes now, their protocols. They think we're dead, that gives us an advantage. We use their own network against them, track Trin down, and make him tell us why our own command wants us silenced. One by one, his men nodded. The despair of abandonment transformed into something else. The cold fury of betrayed soldiers with nothing left but vengeance. What's the call, Sarge? Hacksaw asked, checking his M60's ammunition. Jack chambered a round in his rifle. We hunt. The click was almost imperceptible, a sound so soft it could have been a twig settling or a leaf falling. But Jack had spent 2 tours learning the sound of death. Hacksaw, freeze! The big man went statue still, his boot hovering, an inch above the ground. In the filtered sunlight, Jack could just make out the tripwires gleam. Don't move. Jack worked with practiced precision, tracing the wire to its source. Korean War vintage claymore, rigged to a tree trunk. 1 more inch and Hacksaw would have been shredded. I got you, brother, Jack murmured, carefully disarming. The mine. Step back, slow. Hacksaw's face was sheet white as he retreated. Thanks, Sarge, I should have. We're all tired. Jack cut him off. Stay sharp. They'll have more surprises waiting. They'd been moving for hours, following the direction of suspected Viet Cong supply routes. Every step was a gamble, every shadow a potential ambush. But they weren't running anymore. They were hunting. Movement. Rookie whispered from point. Position. His hands were steady now, his earlier fear replaced by something colder, harder. 3-man patrol 50 meters. Jack studied the patrol through his scope. Standard VC formation, but something was off about their movement. Too precise. Too practiced. These aren't local guerrillas, he realized. These are regulars. We're getting close to something important. Take them? Dimes asked, knife already in hand. Jack nodded. Silent. We need their intel more than their bodies. They moved like ghosts through the underbrush, each man knowing his role without need for signals. A week ago, they would have avoided this fight. Now, they embraced it. The first 2 VC never knew what hit them. Dimes and Hacksaw struck simultaneously, Blade and Garrote making quick work. The third had time to turn, eyes widening in recognition before Rookie's knife found his throat. Search them, Jack ordered. Anything that might... Contact. Preacher's warning came a heartbeat before the ground gave way beneath Rookie's feet. The kid disappeared with a strangled yelp. Punji pit. Jack scrambled to the edge of the concealed trap. Below, Rookie hung by one arm, his legs dangling above a forest of sharpened bamboo stakes. I got him. Hacksaw grabbed the kid's arm, hauling him to safety. Rookie's face was ashen, but his eyes remained focused, determined. Thanks, he gasped. I'm good. Found something, Preacher called from where he was searching the bodies. He held up a blood-stained document he'd pulled from inside one of the dead men's uniforms. Map. They gathered around as Preacher spread the paper out. It was crude, but detailed, showing supply routes and patrol patterns. And there, marked with a simple X, was what could only be a command post. This is it, Jack said softly. Trin's headquarters. Preacher studied the map with unsettling intensity, as if reading divine prophecy in its lines. The path is revealed, he murmured, but the price of knowledge is blood. They'll know we're coming, Dimes warned. Those bodies will be found. Good, Jack replied. Let them know. Let them feel what it's like to be hunted. They moved out again, deeper into enemy territory. The jungle seemed to press closer, branches reaching like grasping hands, shadows deepening despite the midday sun. Rookie had changed the most. The naive kid who'd hesitated to take a shot was gone, replaced by a predator with dead eyes and steady hands. They'd all changed, really. The jungle had stripped away their civilized veneer, leaving only the brutal truth beneath. You're walking into your graves, Marines. The voice drifted from the shadows ahead, speaking perfect English. They didn't bother to look for its source. The jungle itself seemed to carry Trin's words. These are the hunting grounds of giants, the voice continued. You are nothing but children playing at war. Keep talking, Jack muttered, checking his weapon. Help us find you. They pressed forward, into darkness that seemed to breathe. There was no turning back now. No extraction, no rescue, no hope of seeing home again. Their war had become something personal, something primal, and somewhere ahead, in the heart of this green hell, answers awaited. They just had to survive, long enough to find them. They heard him before they saw him, the wet, rattling breath of a dying man. He emerged from the undergrowth like a ghost, uniform dark with blood, hands raised in surrender. Please, he gasped in broken English. I help you. I tell everything. Dimes's rifle came up instantly. On your knees. The soldier complied, moving with the jerky motions of someone fighting through pain. A bullet wound in his side had soaked his uniform crimson. Trin? The man coughed. Trin expects you, wants you to come. Yeah? Dimes's finger tightened on the trigger. Then maybe we should send you back to him in pieces. Wait, Jack ordered, studying their prisoner. Something wasn't right. The wound was real, but the man's eyes were too alert, too calculating. "You're not just some grunt, are you?" The soldier's lips twisted in what might have been a smile. Was radio operator for Captain Trin." He coughed again, blood staining his teeth. "I hear everything. Know who betrayed you." Rookie moved forward, his young face now a mask of cold fury. "We should make him talk. Really talk." "Jesus, kid," Hacksaw muttered, but there was no real shock in his voice. They'd all changed too much for that. "One of yours," the soldier continued, eyes locked on Jack. "Before mission. He sent radio message, special frequency." Another, wet cough. "I can prove." "He's lying," Dimes snarled. "Playing for time. Let me finish him." Jack held up his hand. "If you're telling the truth, why help us?" "Trin." The man's face twisted with hatred. "Trin kill my family. Say they spy for Americans, but was lie. He killed them because..." He broke into a fit of coughing. "Because what?" Jack pressed. "Because he can. Because Trin answered to no one. Not north, not south, only power." The soldier's eyes burned with fever and rage. "I help you kill him, this my..." He searched for the word. "Revenge." "Bullshit," Dimes spat. "Every word." "Could be," Jack admitted. "But if he's telling the truth..." "If he's telling the truth, we might actually have a chance," Preacher finished, his voice unnaturally calm. "And if he's lying, we're already dead." Jack made his decision. "Tie him up. We'll..." The explosion cut him off, distant but massive, sending birds screaming into the sky. "That's the supply route we passed," Hacksaw reported grimly. "They're sweeping the area." The prisoner smiled through bloody teeth. "See? They come. Trin knows you close." "You son of a bitch." Dimes raised his rifle again. "You led them right to us." "No." The man's eyes went wide. "Is trap, yes, but not mine. Think. Why they not attack yet? Why send me first?" Jack's mind raced. The man was right. If this was a simple ambush, why the elaborate setup? Unless... Because Trin wants to watch us break, he realized aloud. He wants to see what we'll do with you. Another explosion, closer. The jungle itself seemed to tremble. "We need to move," Hacksaw urged. "Kill me or trust me." The prisoner locked eyes with Jack. "But choose fast." Jack looked at his squad, saw the fractures spreading between them. Dimes vibrated with barely contained violence, ready to execute the prisoner on the spot. Rookie's face was a cold mask, suggesting methods of interrogation that would have horrified him a week ago. Even Preacher's habitual calm seemed strained, his fingers drumming restlessly on his rifle. They were coming apart. The pressure, the paranoia, the constant threat of betrayal, it was all taking its toll. One wrong decision now could shatter them completely. "Tie him up," Jack repeated. "We take him with us." "Sarge," Dimes started to protest. "That's an order, Corporal." Jack's voice carried an edge that brooked no argument. "We're not executioners. Not yet." The prisoner smiled again as they bound his hands. "Wise choice, Sergeant. Or maybe fatal one. We see soon, yes?" Another explosion rocked the jungle close enough to feel the heat. They were running out of time. "Move out," Jack ordered. "And remember, everyone's a potential enemy now. Everyone." As they melted back into the jungle's embrace, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just made a deal with the devil. The only question was, which devil? The one they'd captured or the one hunting them through the shadows of their own command? The answer, he feared, would cost them more than blood to discover. Jack woke to wrongness. The jungle's pre-dawn. Chorus had gone silent and the air carried a scent he couldn't place. Something metallic, familiar. Then it hit him. The prisoner's bonds lay empty, the ropes carefully unknotted rather than cut. "On your feet," he hissed, but his men were already moving, weapons ready. "How?" Dimes demanded, checking the perimeter. "I was on watch, I never..." "You fell asleep?" Hacksaw's accusation carried an ugly edge. "No, I swear, I never..." "The map." Preacher's voice cut through their argument. "The one from the VC corpse. It's gone." Jack's mind raced. The ropes, the missing map, the silence. This wasn't an escape, this was an extraction. Someone untied him, Rookie said, his young face hard as stone. Someone who knew exactly when to move. The words hung in the air like poison gas. They'd suspected a traitor in their ranks, but now they had proof. One of them had helped the prisoner escape. One of his own men. "Spread out," Jack ordered. "Search the..." The explosion shattered the morning. A carefully placed charge that sent dirt and vegetation raining down. When the dust cleared, they saw what remained of their prisoner sprawled across a fallen log. The blast had been precise, targeted, professional. "Jesus Christ," Hacksaw breathed. "Check the body," Jack ordered. But he already knew what they'd find. The man had been executed, not just killed but silenced. "Sarge," Dimes called out, his voice tight. "You need to see this." Carved into the log beneath the corpse, fresh enough that sap still beaded on the cuts, was a message. "Coming home, Marines." "They're playing with us," Rookie snarled, but Jack barely heard him. He was watching Preacher, noting how the religious man stood slightly apart, how his eyes seemed to hold something like satisfaction. It made sense. Preacher had found the map. Preacher always seemed to know what was coming. Preacher, with his cryptic warnings and perfect calm in the face of chaos. But if he voiced his suspicions now, the squad would tear itself apart. They needed unity more than ever, even if that unity was a lie. "The map showed Trin's base," Jack said carefully. "Whoever took it, whoever killed our prisoner, they're trying to lead us there." "It's a trap," Dimes spat. "Has to be." "Of course it's a trap," Rookie replied, and Jack barely recognized the cold calculation in the kid's voice. "But we're going anyway, aren't we?" "We have to." Jack checked his weapon, an automatic gesture that had become almost prayer-like. "But from now on, we watch each other. Every second. Trust no one." "Even you, Sarge?" Preacher asked softly, and Jack heard the challenge beneath the question. "Especially me." They moved out, following the direction the map had shown before. It's theft. Each man watched the other's, fingers never far from triggers. The trust that had kept them alive through countless missions had been replaced by something darker, more primal. "You think Trin knows?" Hacksaw asked as they walked. About which one of us is his." "He knows everything else," Jack replied grimly. "Why not that?" The jungle pressed in around them, and with every step, Jack felt the noose tightening. Trin wanted them to come, had orchestrated this entire deadly game to draw them in. But why? What could be worth all this? Elaborate manipulation? The answer lay ahead, in a base that might not even exist, guarded by an enemy who might be walking right beside them. And somewhere in the shadows, a traitor waited for the perfect moment to strike. "Watch your six," Jack ordered, knowing the irony of warning men to watch their backs when the knife would almost certainly come from the front. They pushed deeper into enemy territory, each man alone with his suspicions, his fears, his guilt. The brotherhood that had defined them was gone, replaced by a dark mirror of itself where every familiar face held potential betrayal. Trin had won that much already. The only question was, how much more would he take before this game was done? They found Trin's base at dawn, a sprawling compound nestled in a valley that shouldn't exist. No recon flights had ever reported this location. No intelligence had ever hinted at its presence. It was as if the jungle itself had parted to reveal its secret heart. "Jesus," Dimes whispered from their ridge position. "Look at the size of it." Through his scope, Jack counted at least 50 Viet Cong moving with military precision. Guard, towers, ammunition dumps, radio antennas. This wasn't some temporary camp, this was a fortress. "Preacher," he called softly, "get me a..." The words died in his throat. Where the religious man had been crouching moments ago, only his gear remained. Pack, spare ammunition, even his dog tags. "Son of a bitch," Dimes snarled, immediately bringing his rifle up to scan the tree line. "Son of a goddamn bitch." "I knew it," Rookie's voice was flat, empty. Deep down, we all knew. Jack moved to where Preacher had been positioned. The morning dew revealed fresh tracks, not heading away from the base but toward it, like a man walking home. He was their eyes, Hacksaw realized aloud. Every step of the way, every ambush, every trap, he was guiding us here. All those prayers. Dimes's hand shook on his rifle. All that religious bullshit about judgment and fate. He was playing us the whole time. Jack said nothing. The truth was a stone in his gut. He'd suspected Preacher for days, had seen the signs, but hadn't acted. Because admitting one of their own could betray them meant admitting everything they'd fought for might be a lie. "If I see him," Dimes continued, his voice hard with rage, "I'm putting him down. No hesitation, no last words, just a bullet." "Get in line," Rookie said, and Jack barely recognized the cold killer who had replaced the uncertain kid they'd started this mission with. Movement at the base's main gate caught Jack's attention. A figure in black pajamas walked with casual confidence past the guards. Even at this distance, the ramrod straight posture was unmistakable. "There's our Judas," Hacksaw growled. They watched as Preacher disappeared into what had to be the command building. Minutes later, the camp's activity increased. More guards, more patrols. They were preparing for something. A frontal assault would be suicide, Jack said, mind racing through options that all ended in death. "So we just let him go?" Dimes demanded. "Let him get away with—" "No." Jack's voice carried a finality that silenced them all. "We use him, the same way he used us." Understanding dawned in their eyes. Preacher had led them here thinking they'd die in some grand last stand. But he'd also given them something invaluable, an inside man. "We track his movements," Jack continued, "learn his patterns, and when the moment's right, we turn his betrayal into our advantage." Rookie finished, and there was something terrifying in how quickly the kid had adapted to this deadly calculus. "What if that's what they want?" Hacksaw asked. "What if this is just another layer of the trap? Then we spring it." Jack checked his ammunition, 4 magazines left. "But this time, we're ready. This time, we know exactly who the enemy is." They spent the next hour plotting approaches, marking guard positions, timing patrols. Every man knew this might be their last battle. But something had changed. The shock of Preacher's betrayal had crystallized their rage into purpose. 2 hours till full light, Jack finally said. "We move then. Anyone want to back out, now's the time." The question was met with cold stares and chambered rounds. "Remember," he added, "Preacher knows all our tactics, all our signals. We improvise everything. And if you see him, he dies." Dimes finished. "They all die." The sun continued to rise over Trin's fortress, burning away the morning mist. Somewhere inside, a traitor prepared for their final attack. But Preacher had forgotten the first rule of betrayal. A knife cuts both ways. They had been led here to die. But if death was coming, they'd make sure it took Judas first. The stolen uniforms felt wrong against Jack's skin, like wearing a dead man's clothes, which, he supposed, they were. The Viet Cong patrol they'd ambushed wouldn't need them anymore. "Remember," he whispered to his men as they approached the compound's rear gate. "Heads down, confident steps. We belong here." They moved with the practiced ease of men who'd studied their enemies' patterns for hours. Each step, each gesture calculated to avoid attention. The guards barely glanced at them, just another patrol returning from the jungle. Inside, the base was a maze of temporary structures and permanent fortifications. Guards walked the walls, their AK-47s silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky. In the center, a large command tent glowed from within. "There," Jack signaled. "They're a target." They split up, maintaining their cover as they worked their way closer to the command center. Jack's heart thundered in his chest, but his hands remained steady. They'd come too far for nerves now. Through a gap in the tent's entrance, he caught glimpses of radio equipment, maps spread across tables. But no Trin, no Preacher, Dimes, reached the tent first, slipping inside with a casualness that came from knowing any hesitation could mean death. Jack followed, then Rookie, then Hacksaw. The tent was empty of personnel, but full of evidence. Maps marked with American positions. Intelligence reports. And there, sitting on a table like a trophy, was the radio they'd been hunting. The one that had intercepted their communications. This was his. Dimes picked up the radio, his voice thick with rage. This is how Preacher did it. How he fed them everything about us. Jack studied the maps, his blood running cold. These weren't just tactical positions, they were complete operational plans for the next 6 months. Patrol routes, supply lines, base locations. Everything an enemy would need to bleed the American forces dry. Sarge, Rookie's voice carried a warning. Movement outside. Before Jack could respond, an alarm blared, a harsh mechanical wail that shattered the pre-dawn quiet. They'd been made. Positions, Jack ordered, but it was too late. The tent, flap opened, and there stood Preacher, rifle raised, looking exactly as he had every day they'd served together. Except for his eyes. His eyes were different now. Damn you, Dimes snarled, bringing up his weapon. Don't. Preacher's voice was calm, almost gentle. You'll bring the entire base down on us. Why? Jack asked, though he already knew the answer wouldn't satisfy. Because this war is a lie, Preacher replied. Because men like Trin understand what your commanders don't, that empire builders all fall the same way. A thin smile crossed his face. You were never supposed to make it this far. Your survival has been inconvenient. Where's Trin? Jack demanded. Close, watching. He's been watching since the beginning. Preacher's rifle didn't waver. Did you really think you were hunting him? He's been hunting you, all of you, testing your limits, your loyalty, your breaking points. Rookie's hands trembled on his weapon, the kid's restored confidence cracking in the face of this final betrayal. Everything they'd been through, every near-death experience, every moment of paranoia, it had all been orchestrated by the man they'd trusted, to watch their backs. You led us here to die, Jack said flatly. I led you here to understand, Preacher corrected, that everything you believe in is built on sand, that loyalty to a corrupt cause is just another form of sin. The alarm continued to wail. Outside, they could hear shouts, running feet. The net was closing. And now? Dimes asked, his finger white on the trigger. Now? Preacher's smile widened. Now you meet the architect of your redemption. Captain Trin has been very eager to... The rest of his words were lost in the chaos as the real attack began. The first explosion ripped through the command tent's eastern wall, showering them with debris. In the sudden chaos, Preacher's rifle shifted just for a moment, and Jack saw his chance. He dove forward, tackling his former friend as gunfire erupted outside. They crashed into a table, maps and intelligence documents scattering around them. Tell me why, Jack demanded, pinning Preacher down. The whole truth now. Preacher didn't resist, that same serene smile still on his face. Colonel Richards sent us here to die, Jack. All of us. Because we saw something we weren't supposed to see. Another explosion rocked the tent. Through the smoke, Jack saw Dimes and Rookie returning fire through the gaps in the canvas. Hacksaw's M60 roared to life, buying them precious seconds. What did we see? Jack pressed harder, his forearm against Preacher's throat. Think back. That village 2 months ago. The one that was supposedly evacuated before the napalm strike. Preacher's eyes burned with zealous fire. It wasn't empty, and the colonel knew, just like he knew about the others. Jack's blood ran cold. He remembered the village, remembered the official report. Area cleared, enemy supplies destroyed. But there had been something else, something they'd all chosen to forget. The shed, he whispered. The locked shed full of children. Preacher finished. Dozens of them. Murdered to cover up the fact that someone was selling information about civilian locations to the highest bidder. Whether that bitter wore an American flag or a VC star didn't matter. Contact right. Rookie's shout pierced the revelation. The kid fired in controlled bursts. His hesitation finally burned away by the heat of combat. 2 VC went down, then 3. Richards is working both sides, Preacher continued, still maddeningly calm despite the chaos, selling intelligence to the VC, weapons to the ARVN, skimming money from both. And men like Trin, they're just his partners in a much bigger game. So you betrayed us to stop him? Jack's grip tightened. By working with the same monsters? I chose the lesser evil. Preacher's smile turned sad. Trin may be a butcher, but at least he's honest about what he is. He doesn't hide behind a flag while counting blood money. The tense entrance exploded inward as Trin's men began their assault. Dime's rage finally broke. He sprayed fire wildly, screaming curses in English and broken Vietnamese. "They're inside the wire," Hacksaw called out. "We're being overrun." In the chaos, Preacher made his move. A hidden knife flashed, forcing Jack back. The former Marine rolled to his feet with practiced grace. "Your choice now, Jack," he said, backing toward a hole in the tense wall. "Die here trying to protect a lie or help us burn the whole corrupt system down." "You son of a bitch!" Dimes turned his rifle toward Preacher, but more VC troops burst in, forcing him back into cover. "Trin will explain everything," Preacher's voice carried over the gunfire. "If you survive long enough to hear it." Then he was gone, swallowed by smoke and shadow, leaving them to face the consequences of his betrayal. "What's the call, Sarge?" Rookie asked, reloading with blood-streaked hands. The kid who had once hesitated to shoot was gone forever, replaced by a killer forged in betrayal's fire. Jack looked at his men. Dimes lost in berserker rage, Hacksaw grimly feeding rounds into his M60, Rookie waiting for the order that would damn or save them all. They weren't just fighting the VC anymore. They were fighting their own command, their own country's darkness. Through the smoke, he could see more enemy troops moving in. Somewhere out there, Trin was watching, waiting. And now Jack knew why. "We finished this," he said, chambering around. "All of it." The real war was just beginning. They fought their way across the compound like men possessed, past the point of fear, past the point of reason. Hacksaw's M60 never stopped singing, the big Kentucky farm boy roaring scripture of his own as he cut down waves of attacking VC. "Come on, you bastards," he screamed between bursts. "Come get some." Jack moved on pure instinct now. Every lesson, learned in 2 tours distilled into lethal efficiency: duck, shoot, roll, reload. The rhythm of survival stripped down to its essence. They'd almost reached the compound's eastern wall when Dimes went down. "Contact left." The radio man's warning turned into a grunt of pain as the bullet took him, in the gut. But even as he fell, he kept firing, his Thompson chattering death. "I got you." Jack grabbed his friend's vest, dragging him behind a stack of ammunition crates. Blood soaked Dimes's shirt, but his eyes remained clear, focused. "Leave me," he gasped. "I'll slow you down." "Not happening." Jack tossed him fresh magazines. "You die when I say you die, Marine." A VC officer appeared around the corner. Pistol raised, Jack's rifle barked twice and the man dropped. A leather case flew from the dead officer's hand, spilling papers across the blood-stained earth. Jack snatched them up, recognizing names, dates, locations. This wasn't just tactical intelligence. This was proof. Bank transfers, weapons manifests, Colonel Richards' signature on documents that could bring down half the command structure. "Sarge." Rookie's warning came too late. The VC came at him low and fast, knife glinting in the pre-dawn light. Jack's rifle was empty, no time to reload. The blade slashed past his face as they crashed together, rolling in the mud. Then Rookie was there. All trace of the hesitant kid burned away. He fought with the cold precision of a natural killer, knife against knife, his face expressionless, as he drove his blade up under the enemy's ribs. "Thanks," Jack managed, but Rookie was already moving, scanning for more threats. The transformation was complete. Whatever innocence the kid had carried into Vietnam had died in this compound. There! Hacksaw's voice carried over the gunfire. Behind the supply shed! Through the smoke, Jack saw it. A concrete bunker entrance. The kind that led to tunnel complexes. Trin's escape route. That's our way in, he decided. Dimes, can you move? The radio man grunted, pressing a hand against his bleeding stomach. Watch me. They fought their way toward the bunker entrance, every step paid for in blood. Hacksaw's M60 ran dry, then his pistol. He ended up using the machine gun as a club, smashing skulls with mechanical efficiency. Rookie moved like a ghost through, the chaos knife and rifle claiming lives with equal precision. No hesitation now, no doubt, just the cold calculation of a born survivor. Jack led them through it all. His world narrowed to the next threat, the next target, the next breath. The documents felt heavy in his pocket. Proof of corruption that had cost hundreds of lives. American lives. Vietnamese lives. Lives traded for profit by men who would never see combat. They reached the bunker entrance as the compound's remaining. Defenders launched their final assault. Hacksaw braced in the doorway, his borrowed AK buying them seconds with its last magazine. Go, he roared. I got this. Like hell, Dimes growled through clenched teeth. We go together. Jack took one last look at his squad, Hacksaw bleeding from a dozen cuts but standing strong, Dimes pale with blood loss but refusing to quit, Rookie scanning the shadows with predator's eyes. They were all that was left of what had once been America's finest, and they were about to dive into hell itself. Down we go, he ordered, leading the way into the darkness. Watch your sectors. They know we're coming. Good, Rookie said, softly, and in his voice Jack heard the death of mercy. The tunnel swallowed them whole, the sounds of combat above fading into tomb-like silence. Somewhere ahead, Trin waited. Somewhere ahead, answers awaited. They moved forward, 4 men bleeding but unbroken, carrying proof of betrayal and a burning need for vengeance. The real enemy wasn't waiting in these tunnels. The real enemy wore their own flag. The tunnel opened into a concrete bunker that could have been built by the Japanese or the French, ghosts of empires past still haunting Vietnam's soil. Banks of radio equipment lined the walls, maps covered in annotations hung everywhere, and in the center, sitting behind a simple, wooden desk was Captain Bao Trin. He was smaller than Jack had imagined, dressed in an immaculate North Vietnamese officer's uniform. His eyes were intelligent, amused even as he watched them enter. Sergeant Calloway, he said in perfect English, right on schedule. Dimes collapsed against a wall, his borrowed AK never wavering despite the blood soaking his shirt. Hacksaw and Rookie took up firing positions, but Trin seemed unconcerned. You've led us on quite a chase, Jack said, his own rifle trained on Trin's chest. Led you? Trin smiled. No, Sergeant. I merely opened doors. Your friend Preacher led you here, following orders from the same men who sent you to die. Where is he? Gone. His role was simply to deliver you, to prove his loyalty to certain interested parties in your command structure. Trin's smile widened. Did you really think he was working for me? I'm just a middleman in a much larger game. The village, Jack said. The weapons sales, Richard's whole operation. You have proof? Of course. Insurance, you might say. When powerful men play both sides, the truly wise keep records. Trin gestured to a filing cabinet. Everything you need to burn your corrupt command to the ground, it's yours. In exchange for what? Walk away. Trin spread his hands. Take the evidence, expose the truth, but leave me to my business. After all, I'm not your real enemy, I never was. For a moment, Jack was tempted. The documents in his pocket and whatever was in that cabinet could end the corruption that had sent good men to die, could bring justice to that village, those children. Sarge, Dimes coughed, blood staining his teeth. Don't trust him. Men like this, they're all part of the same disease. Consider carefully, Sergeant, Trin said softly. You've lost enough men. Why die here when... The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him back. Jack's rifle smoked. That's for every Marine who died making men like you rich. Trin's face contorted with rage. His hand darted for a pistol hidden beneath the desk. Time slowed. Dimes, pale as death, squeezed off a burst that went wide. Hacksaw's borrowed weapon clicked empty. Trin's pistol cleared leather. And Rookie, the kid who once couldn't take a shot, put a round through Trin's eye with sniper's precision. The Vietnamese commander toppled backward, taking his secrets with him. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the first explosion rocked the bunker. "Demo charges!" Hacksaw shouted. "They're collapsing the tunnels." Concrete dust rained down as another blast shook the walls. They had minutes, maybe less. "The cabinet," Jack ordered. "Grab everything." They stuffed documents into packs as the bunker groaned around them. Intelligence reports, weapons manifests, photographs that could end careers or start wars, all of it gathered in a desperate scramble. "Move!" Jack grabbed Dimes, hauling his friend upright. "We're not dying." In this hole, they ran through collapsing tunnels, counting seconds between explosions, letting pure instinct guide them toward the surface. Behind them, decades of secrets were being buried in concrete and earth. But they had enough proof to expose it all, if they survived to use it. The tunnel's ceiling began to fall. They emerged into chaos. The compound was burning, secondary explosions sending shrapnel singing through the morning air. Jack half-carried, half-dragged Dimes through the carnage, the radio man's blood leaving a dark trail in the mud. "Stay with me, brother," Jack urged, as Dimes stumbled again. "That's an order." "You and your damn orders." Dimes managed a weak smile, blood staining his teeth. Never was good at following those. Rookie took point, moving with the fluid grace of a veteran twice his age. The naive kid who'd started this mission was gone, replaced by something harder, darker. He dropped 2 VC with precise shots, never breaking stride. Hacksaw brought up the rear, his borrowed AK barking in short bursts. "East gate's clear. Move." They made it 50 yards into the jungle before Dimes's legs gave out completely. Jack tried to lift him, but the radio man pushed him away. "Jack," he said softly, using his friend's real name for the first time in years. "You know what has to happen." "No." Jack grabbed him again. "I'm not leaving you. I never leave a man." "The documents," Dimes cut him off. "Everything we found. Don't let them bury this. Don't let those children die for nothing." Movement. In the jungle behind them. A VC patrol closing fast. "Contact rear." Hacksaw opened up with his last magazine. "Sarge," Rookie called from ahead. "We need to move. Now." Dimes pulled something from his pocket, the bloody documents they'd taken from the officer in the compound. "Here, this and whatever you got. From Trin's bunker. It's enough. It has to be enough." "Danny," Jack's voice cracked. They'd been through 2 tours together, saved each other's lives a dozen times. More than friends. More than brothers. "Go," Dimes said, pushing himself up against a tree. His Thompson lay across his lap, one last magazine in place. "Let me do this right." The patrol was closer now. They could hear voices, orders being shouted in Vietnamese. "I can't." "You can, you will." Dimes's eyes were clear despite the pain. "Someone has to make it back. Someone has to tell the truth." Jack felt Rookie's hand on his shoulder, pulling him away. The kid's face was a mask of controlled grief. He'd learned that lesson too well. "Semper Fi, you ugly bastards," Dimes called after them, his voice stronger now. At peace. They ran. Behind them, Dimes's Thompson came to life one last time, the sound echoing through the jungle. Then another burst, and another. Then silence. Jack wanted to scream, to turn back, to die beside his friend. But the weight of the documents in his pocket drove him forward. Dimes had died to get this truth out, they all had. Rookie moved like a ghost through the underbrush, somehow finding paths where none existed. The kid had learned the jungle's language too well, had let its darkness into his soul. Hacksaw said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Some ghosts you carry forever. They ran until their lungs burned, until the sounds of combat faded behind them. Only then did Jack allow himself to feel the weight of what they'd lost. Not just dimes, but something more fundamental. Their faith, their innocence, their belief in the righteousness of their cause. "Where to?" Rookie asked, his voice empty of everything but necessity. Jack checked his compass, fighting back the grief that threatened to drown him. "There's a Marine firebase 20 clicks northeast. If we push hard, we might contact front." The jungle erupted with gunfire. The remote outpost was little more than a concrete bunker and a radio tower, manned by 2 Green Army privates who looked ready to shoot anything that moved. It had taken Jack and what remained of his squad 6 hours of hard fighting to reach. Call sign Sierra 3, Jack said into the radio mic using their official designation. "Request immediate extraction. Authentication code Delta 79er. Static answered. The 2 privates exchanged nervous glances. They'd already told Jack this frequency had been dead for hours. "Sierra 3 to any available units. We have vital intelligence for command. Request immediate." Negative. The voice that cut through wasn't the usual command operator. "No survivors in sector. Repeat, no survivors." Jack's blood ran cold. They'd been officially written off, declared dead, which meant anyone who showed up alive was a problem that needed solving. "They're going to try to finish what Trin started," Rookie said softly. The kid's eyes never stopped scanning the tree line, hands steady on his rifle. He understood now, really understood what they were up against. Like hell, Hacksaw was already moving, pulling blocks of C4 from his pack. "I didn't survive all this just to die quiet." Jack keyed the mic again. "This is Sergeant Jack. Calloway. We have proof of Colonel Richard's operation, proof of the village, the weapons sales, everything." His voice hardened. "Either we get extraction, or this evidence goes to every news outlet from here to Saigon." More silence. Then a different voice. "Hold position, Sierra 3. Extraction inbound." "They're coming to kill us," Rookie said matter-of-factly. "You know that, right?" Jack nodded. "Hacksaw?" "Charges are set." The big man had rigged the entire outpost with enough explosives to leave nothing but a crater. "They try anything funny, this whole place goes up, along with their precious radio relay station." The 2 Army privates looked terrified. Jack couldn't blame them. They were just kids caught in something they couldn't understand. "Get in the bunker," he told them. "Whatever happens in the next hour, you don't want to be part of it." They didn't argue, disappearing into the concrete shelter with the speed of men who'd learned when to make themselves scarce. The sound of rotors grew in the distance. Not the familiar thump of a Huey, but something heavier. A Chinook. "They're sending a heavy lifter," Hacksaw noted. "Enough room for a whole kill team." Jack felt the weight of Trin's documents in, his pocket mixed with the blood-stained papers Dimes had died protecting. The truth about everything, the corruption, the betrayals, the senseless deaths. Worth dying for? Dimes had thought so. "What's the play, Sarge?" Rookie asked, but his tone said he already knew. "We let them land," Jack said. "We let them think they've got us, and then we show them what cornered rats can do." Hacksaw finished, patting his rigged explosives. The Chinook was visible now, a dark shape against the morning sky. In the distance, Jack thought he could see smaller shapes following. Hueys, probably loaded with men whose orders were simple. Leave no witnesses. "One way or another," Hacksaw said grimly, "this ends today." Jack looked at what remained of his squad. Rookie, the innocent kid transformed into a cold-eyed killer. Hacksaw, the simple farm boy who'd learned to love the violence. And somewhere behind them, Dime's body cooling in the jungle, Preacher's betrayal still burning in their guts. The Chinook began its descent, kicking up dust and debris. Through the open rear door, Jack could see armed men in unmarked fatigues. Not regular army, someone's private cleanup crew. "Ready?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. Rookie chambered around. "Born ready." The helicopter touched down. Colonel Marcus Hayes sat in the Chinook's cargo bay like a king, on a throne of ammunition crates. His uniform was pristine, his silver eagles gleaming, but his eyes were dead things. Shark's eyes, soldier's eyes, killer's eyes. "Sergeant Calloway," he said as Jack and his remaining men boarded. "Quite the dramatic extraction request." Jack felt the documents in his pocket like a burning coal. Hacksaw's detonator was still in his hand. One squeeze and this whole thing would end in fire. "Sir." Jack kept his voice neutral. Behind him, Rookie and Hacksaw took positions that gave them clear shots at the colonel's security detail. 4 men in unmarked fatigues who tried too hard to look casual. The Chinook lifted off, banking hard toward the rising sun. Through the open door, Jack could see the jungle falling away below them. Somewhere down there, Dimes's body lay cooling in the undergrowth. Somewhere down there, Preacher was probably already planning his next betrayal. "Quite a story you could tell," Hayes said as they gained altitude. "About Trin, about Richards, about that village." He smiled, but it never reached those dead eyes. "About all of it." "Could tell, sir?" "The question is, should you?" Hayes leaned forward. "War's a complicated thing, Sergeant. Sometimes the truth does more damage than lies. Sometimes knowing too much gets good men killed." Jack thought about Dimes, about his last words. "Don't let them bury this." He thought about the children in that shed, about Trin's network of corruption, about all the soldiers who died to keep powerful men rich. He could end it all right now. Show the documents, force the truth into the light. But then what? How many more would die in the aftermath? How many more villages would burn while politicians and generals pointed fingers? Rookie watched him, waiting. The kid had learned too much about the real war, had lost too much innocence to ever get it back. But maybe he could still have a life. "You want us to forget everything," Jack said. It wasn't a question. Hayes smiled again. "In exchange for certain considerations, promotions, comfortable assignments far from the action, a chance to go home and live. And if we don't?" The colonel's smile vanished. "Then perhaps we'll eventually find your bodies. Tragic casualties of a classified operation gone wrong. Or perhaps we won't find them at all." Jack felt Hacksaw, tense beside him, thumb hovering over the detonator. One word from Jack and they'd all go down together, taking Hayes and his threats with them. But then what? What would their deaths prove? That the system was corrupt? Everyone already knew that. That good men died for bad causes? That was the oldest story in the book. Jack reached into his pocket, felt the damning documents there. Everything they'd fought for. Everything Dimes had died for. All the proof needed to bring down an empire of lies. He looked out at the jungle one last time. Vietnam spread below them like a green ocean, swallowing its secrets, digesting its dead. The war would go on with or without them. The lies would continue. The innocent would die. But maybe, just maybe, they could live to fight another day, another way. Jack pulled his hand from his pocket, empty. "Nothing to tell, sir," he said. "It was a standard patrol. We got lost. We found our way back." Hayes nodded, satisfied. "Good man. I'll make sure your report reflects that." Rookie's face remained expressionless, but Jack saw the understanding in his eyes. Some wars couldn't be won with bullets or truth. Some wars you survived by knowing when to hold your fire. The Chinook turned north toward safety, toward home, toward a future bought with silence. But as the jungle faded behind them, Jack knew the real war would never end. Not for them. They'd carry it inside, like shrapnel too deep to dig out. The document stayed in his pocket, waiting. Maybe someday the truth would matter more than survival. Maybe someday the cost of silence would outweigh the price of speaking. But not today. Today they lived. Today they carried their secrets. Home. The helicopter disappeared into the morning sky, leaving behind a jungle full of ghosts and a war that would never really end. Not for the ones who knew the truth. Not for the ones who made it back. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.